Hi everyone. I thought I would do a short podcast giving you some generic feedback from your first assessment tasks, the online reflective journals, and leading from that some more advice about your assessment task 3, because it's become apparent when marking them that some of you are still a little bit confused about a couple of issues that will affect your assessment task 3. So this is probably worth reading for everybody or viewing. In the practice of giving positive feedback first, I wanted to talk about what worked well in your reflective journals. And the standout thing for those people who did quite well in this assignment, what stood out was the way that you made connections between what was presented in the online lectures and your experiences in the island investigation, your experiences from placement, and how those reflections are connecting to your beliefs about learning and teaching. For some of you, this course is shaking those beliefs a little bit, for which I make no apology. I'm quite pleased that I've got you thinking about what you see when you're in classrooms and how these ideas might or might not relate. And I guess that leads to the other thing that I liked about many of the reflective journals that were posted, and that you're starting to really ask deep questions about the ideas that were raised in these online lectures and in our investigation of the island, and how these ideas might apply to your own teaching practices, and why perhaps you're not seeing these ideas enacted more commonly whilst you're on placement. So that was what worked really well in the reflective journals. I guess the other thing that I haven't put here is what worked well is where some of you were able to connect to some of the other ideas or deeper ideas that were in some of the readings. Leading on from that, it would be better if, in your reflective journals, some of you engaged with the reading. Some of you were quite open about still being a little confused or not quite understanding, but it was evident from what you were saying in those reflections that you hadn't gone beyond the online lecture. That to me is not a strength, and just to remind you that lectures are signposts for you to go and investigate some of these concepts further. And I've given you lots and lots and lots of resources in the Blackboard and on the Facebook group that can help lead you to that deeper understanding. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have questions, but part of your responsibility is to try and solve some of those questions yourself through engaging with those readings. As I said in the previous slide, those of you who did engage with the readings could demonstrate a much deeper connection to the ideas. Let's face it, the questioning lecture online went for 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes. That's not a deep level of understanding that I'm conveying in those 5.5 minutes. So to really engage with the ideas around questioning, you really should be reading more, and the suggested readings that I provided were a good starting point. One of the other things that would be better is to not confuse problem-based learning and inquiry-based learning. Now, I'm not surprised that some of you in your journals, as you started to formulate your ideas for your proposal to Richard Battersby and Ladner Virtual School for AT3, some of you were conflating or joining up problem-based learning and inquiry-based learning, talking about them as though they were almost the same thing. Well, they're not, and the next slide, I hope, will start to clarify what some of the differences are. So here we go. Most of you are already or should be very familiar with the inquiry model. Inquiry-based learning is all about exploring an idea to answer a question. The question is often posed by a teacher. In more enlightened classrooms, the inquiry might stem out of issues and discussions and conversations and interests that the students have. But essentially, what the students are doing in an inquiry model is acquiring knowledge as a result of them exploring or finding out about a particular topic. Prior knowledge in inquiry-based learning isn't always important because you can acquire that knowledge through your exploration of the topic. The end point of an inquiry-based learning approach is usually the knowledge that you've gained about that topic. Inquiry focuses on research, it's an exploration. And good inquiry is very strongly student-centred in that there's minimal direct instruction. The students direct the inquiry themselves with teacher guidance. So that's the inquiry model. Let's focus now on the problem-based learning model. Before we get too far into this, I just want to alleviate some of your concerns. I've noticed that a lot of the resources on the internet, when you Google PBL, come up with what's currently the rage in many United States schools, which is project-based learning, otherwise known as challenge-based learning. There are some strong parallels between project and problem-based learning, but they're both different to inquiry. Having said that, I can understand your confusion if you're reading some of those resources or looking at exploring some of those websites, because very often there are teachers there who are misunderstanding what the distinctions between the three modes of learning are. And so there are many websites that are offering suggestions about project-based learning that are really inquiry-based models, or talking about problem-based learning when it's really an inquiry model. So you might need to be very critically aware of that if you're exploring some of those sites for inspiration. To try and overcome that, I've added quite a number of resources to the Facebook page in the last couple of days, as well as to the Blackboard website under Learning Resources. So explore some of those to help you clarify the distinction and to source ideas for your own proposal to Richard Battersby. So what is problem-based learning? Even I'm getting confused now. Problem-based learning is really about solving problems. It's not just about exploring and finding out, although that is a key element of problem-based learning. But you're finding out and exploring in order to solve the problem. Those problems are often ill-structured. We don't always break a problem down into its component parts. So, for example, in the island investigation, the problem was an ill-structured one. How do we establish a sustainable society on this new island? As we have attempted to solve the problem, we've identified subsections to that problem or sub-problems that in identifying that problem we then need to solve in order to solve the bigger problem. So those problems are often ill-structured, and it's in the solving of them that the students learn to structure them, learn to identify those component parts and other elements to the problem that might require them to draw on their prior knowledge. So that gets into this little point here. Often we need to, in solving a problem, we need to draw on knowledge from a variety of discipline areas. We need to draw on our variety of skills and bring them all together. Synthesize is one of those Bloom's words that makes a lot of sense when we're talking about problem-based learning. The end game in problem-based learning is the solution to the problem, not just the knowledge that is isolated. The idea in problem-based learning is that we apply our knowledge to solve the problem. This requires us along the way to form hypotheses about what might be possible. That's not the case when you're in an inquiry-based mode. So hypotheses and creating solutions are characteristics of problem-based learning that distinguish it from inquiry-based learning. And in my view, extends the type of learning that the children can engage in. It is deeper and richer and of a higher order than even inquiry-based. Both models have research involved, that exploration. Both of them involve acquiring new knowledge. Both of them have minimal direct instruction, where the teacher takes on a coach and facilitator and guide by the side role. So let's go back to the island investigation as a way of trying to compare the two. As a problem, your problem was, how do we establish a sustainable society? What do we need to do? What things do we need to think about in order to improve our understanding of sustainability? An inquiry version of the island might simply have been, answer the question, what is sustainability? What is a sustainable society? But there's no engaging context. So to me, good problem-based learning requires us as teachers to develop an engaging context, an authentic type of problem that will hook the students in to their investigation. Not just a contextual free zone, which I think inquiry can sometimes be reduced to. So I hope that explains a little bit more about the distinction between inquiry modes and problem-based learning modes. So in your assessment task 3, make sure you develop that engaging scenario that hooks the students in to solving a problem, not just finding out about. I'll see you guys in class this week.